Hello, welcome to my channel, Save Infinity. In this video, I just wanted to kind of like talk about certain people and things in the world that can go on, especially, with like certain like big key players and stuff like that. Like for an example, I'll just use like Donald Trump as an example because that's like an easy one that comes to mind, that where, those sort of characters can so easily like elicit a lot of frustration or anger or feelings of judgment and stuff like that can really make us can make people get frustrated, or can really amp up a lot of negative emotions and stuff within people and communities and what have you. And just to with those sort of key players and stuff like that, to not try to get too drawn into that sort of denser energy that they can kind of trigger with their actions and behavior and what have you. As difficult as it is, myself, I kind of like to look at those sort of people and key players, kind of not seeing it so much as they're the problem, but they're more just like a symptom of a greater problem. And also finding the benefit in the aspect of them just being another mirror in the greater creator mirror reality of our shared human consciousness that we all reside in. And just the things that can teach us and the benefits that can provide. And so often with things like symptoms, for example, if you have a wound and and it's all pussy and infected, the pus can smell bad and be gross and be terrible, but doing things just to the pus isn't going to change much, right? It's just the symptom. You need to get down and fix the problem of the actual wound to make things better. So just focusing all energy and attention directed towards someone like Trump isn't really going to fix the wound, and is just kind of keeping us burning all our energy towards all these distractions that are essentially just a puppet at this point, right? And a puppet for ulterior motives and different factions and stuff, whatever they're all involved with and aligned with. But it can just be a distraction in that way that burns all our energy and our present moment conscious thought processes and focusing time and all that onto things that, by focusing on it and burning all our energy towards it, still isn't really changing anything other than just stirring the pot energetically continually, and just keeps it going, which is almost part of what they're doing in many aspects, right? Just keeping that dense energy stirring around the world. And so some benefits as well that I feel players like Trump and stuff can play in this sort of mirror reality we live in is as frustrating and stuff as people like that can be. They can also just show us so much about our own reality, and the fact that characters like that can even get into such a high powerful position of power and influence and stuff like that really just shows how much the rest of us aren't stepping in our own place of sovereign power and influence or what have you. Kind of is a great representation of how much the general mass population kind of are just being those sheep in the field, just being just being fed on a flock of cattle that we tend to be bred into. Kind of allows players like that to even succeed in the first place, whereas if a more collective amount of humanity was more awakened and sovereign and in their power, then people like that and characters like that just wouldn't even have a chance, you know what I mean? And so often as well, as frustrating as it is, I feel it can almost give that dynamic of a seesaw, and it can almost feel we're sitting on the bottom end of the seesaw, we're got our butt on the ground, almost our feet on the ground, while players like Trump or what have you and other elites and things like that in positions of power are up high in the sky, just having a great time, woo, You know, and that can feel so frustrating for us when we're like down on the ground. But I guess an important like key part of that it does show us is that it kind of does point out and reflect to us that we are sitting on the ground. Like, you know, we are just sitting there with our feet on the ground on this seesaw, and it kind of then like awakens us to the fact that we can, you know, we can kick our feet up off the ground and balance that seesaw out more. If you get what I mean. So it's kind of like some of those players and, you know, people in, you know, higher positions of hierarchy not doing the greatest thing, or, you know, elites and control and greed and corruption and all those terrible things that can happen and that these sort of players can be part of. It can almost be like, you know, they're up high in the sky on the seesaw, just like la-di-da-di-da, and it can be so frustrating to, you know, see and witness. But, you know, one way of kind of alchemizing some positives from it is like it does give us the ability to see and realize and awaken to the fact that we're sitting on the ground and we can kick our feet up and we can bounce that seesaw up and bring balance more into this world, and, you know, bring more balance for humanity. So it's not just like the seesaw's stuck like this with most of humanity down here on the ground and, like, you know, an unbalanced amount of people up there, and instead we can get the seesaw going again a bit more into balance. And so, you know, without having those players up there like that, you know, up in the sky or la-di-da-di-da, we would maybe never even realize that we are just stuck on the ground and would just remain stuck on the ground for eternity, if you know what I mean. Like, because if we didn't have that mirror there showing us, you know, other potentials and what's possible, or bringing the light and highlighting certain things that we don't like or don't appreciate or that we do want, or etc., you know, without having those people up there on the top of the seesaw, we may not even have the comparison to realize that we are just on the ground and that being up in the sky is possible. So it kind of, you know, gives us then, you know, as horrible as it all is, gives us then the opportunity to awaken to that truth that we can also kick our feet up off the ground and get that seesaw going and balancing. If you get what I mean at all. It's just a way I like to kind of think about and, you know, see those sort of things sometimes in a way that can give some hope and guidance and give some positive results from having to, you know, experience such things, rather than it just all being so negative and doom and gloom of having such players and such characters in our reality, you know, rather than focusing on, you know, all the terrible aspects of having such players in our reality. There is, like, you know, at least that positive side of it, that it does give us that chance to, you know, awaken to the greater truth of our reality and to realize things about ourselves and the world around us, so that we can get that kick off the ground and start balancing the seesaw out eventually, and not just being stuck on the ground forever. All right, well, I might leave that one there for now. Sending you so much peace, love, light, and blessings as always.